we're setting up a lot of dwarf baby tears with 2 celestial pearl danios and 10 black jade cherry shrimp. I'm not sure that this FX2 can handle the bio load from all of that, but we're gonna roll with it. Welcome to the Ecosystem Garage. My name is Ben and I am the Chief Ecosystem Officer here at Betta Botanicals, and today we are setting up a 75-gallon Southeast Asian biotope-inspired Blackwater Aquarium. We're going to be showing everything from the equipment to the sand, the botanicals that we're going to be putting in here that are sourced from just outside Sumatra, West Java. Some of them are from Borneo. And in a later video, we're going to be adding in some fish from a river system in Southeast Asia, in Indonesia, all collected or found in the same river habitat. So let's get into the build. This bucket weighs so much! For this Southeast Asian biotope aquarium, I'm going with a dark substrate with a little bit of lighter fine-grained sand into it. If you were setting up a planted aquarium, you'd probably see a substrate layer coming up to about here, but most times in blackwater ecosystems that we see, there's not a whole lot of plant growth submerged because there's tannins in the water, which is going to reduce the photosynthesis capacity of plants. So we don't really need to worry about having a deep sand bed. The second part of this is the rest of the substrate layer is going to be established from the decomposing leaves, seed pods, and twigs, and it's going to form a nice thick detritus layer, which is a food source for the microfauna like detritus worms and copepods that are going to start showing up into this aquarium after a couple of weeks after it's been set up. We're going to add in some botanicals. Everything here is from our product catalog, which you can find on bettabotanicals.com. And let's show you what we're adding so that you could recreate this in your ecosystems at home. We're going to be using some Longan leaf litter. This is a high antioxidant durable leaf with medium to low amounts of tannins. It has a little bit of a longer composition, so I think this will contrast nicely with some of the rounder leaves that we're going to use. This is one of the most popular botanical seed pods that we have in the hobby. This is known by the trade name jungle pod. We like to call them Sterculia pods because it comes from the Sterculia foetida tree. There's actually a little bit of a folk tale about these. They're not very common in Indonesia because there is a story of a ghost demonic figure that likes to live up in the tree. And these trees have really big overarching branches and cast a shadow, making it really dark underneath the tree. So they like to cut down those trees because people are usually scared of them because of this demonic figure that lives in them. And the branches, as they get old, will actually rot up in the canopy, so they smell bad. But we are very fortunate to have a reliable supply of these Sterculia pods, so I have probably 8 of them in this bucket, so we're going to add them into this ecosystem. They make a great cave as well as food source for plecos or autocinculus. Let's see what else we got in here. All right, this is the Jambolan leaf. Not a super common leaf that we have available in the botanical hobby, but it is one of my favorites. It's ideal for betta fish ecosystems, which is why we're including this in our Southeast Asian biotope-inspired Blackwater Aquarium. Say that 10 times fast. This is kind of a low to medium tannin leaf. It creates a nice amber brown hue to the water, and I think looks really nice in the ecosystem. As it lays flat on the substrate, it also creates a tight little cave for the like thin, slender cochina type complex betas to hide under. This is actually a semi-invasive species found in Indonesia. It is the Indian Casuarinia pine tree. These are the pine needles, and I think that they add really nice detailed texture to the substrate. They're very long and slender and fibrous, and also as they break down, they form a great layer of detritus to feed that microfauna that we talked about earlier in the aquarium. So definitely really good for enriching your substrate layer. A little bit more of a robust botanical. This is a coconut husk. It does a good job to mimic peat in the aquarium, so it's going to help with cation exchange capacity, which basically means it's going to eventually help to condition the water and allow the pH to dip down a little bit lower than what we would see out of our tap water here at our ecosystem garage. Now, you've heard me say that this is a biotope-inspired ecosystem, and that's because we're not using 100% of the correct species of plants that you would natively find in a Southeast Asian river, stream habitat, or floodplain. So one of the examples of this, we're using tree fern fiber, and I think this does a great job of starting to kickstart the ecosystem with that detritus and mulm layer that you would naturally see in the ecosystems where the betas and the gouramis, the rasboras are found. So I have a bunch of this in this bucket, so we're going to use it in the ecosystem to help jumpstart that detritus layer. Now we're just going to chuck everything in. Oh, we forgot one. Here's one of the botanicals I forgot to feature, is sapin pods. These are a robust little seed pod. You can use the bark as well as the leaves from the sapin tree, and they're very flat, and they have a little bit of a curved composition to them, so it creates some intricate habitats underneath them when they rest on the substrate floor. They release a slight red to pink hue to the water. It's not super strong, so if you want to get that red hue, I would go ahead and use the bark from the sapin tree, but this is a nice little detailed accent seed pod. It's great for rasping fish as well as like little tiny fish to pick out the biofilms that grow on this to provide them with some supplemental nutrition in addition to the food that we would naturally feed our fish with. If you've watched any of our Instagram content, you will know that I talk all the time about how to add botanicals into ecosystems, and you might be saying, what the heck, Ben? Why are you literally adding in scoopfuls of botanicals into this aquarium? You're going to kill your fish. And I want to remind you that when we are adding botanicals into a freshly set up ecosystem where there's no fish, there's no shrimp, there's no snails, you can go ahead and add as many botanicals as you want to that ecosystem. We do not need to worry about the oxygen fluctuations that will happen as the botanicals are cultivated with bacteria and fungal growths. If you want to learn more about the botanical preparation process, though, we will pull up a video link somewhere on the screen where you can reference and learn more about botanical preparation for your ecosystems. I can see my hand in this bucket 3 inches down, and then it's gone. So that's how many tannins are released by what we prepared. I'm just going to go in and zhuzh some of the placement of our seed pods, leaf litter. I don't necessarily want these big Sterculia pods right up on the front of the glass. Because it's biotope inspired, we will be using Manzanita branches, but I also have some Borneo wood, also called Rossamala wood, and so it's very fitting for this kind of an ecosystem. My suppliers in Indonesia will send me photos of beta habitats all the time to give me sort of inspiration as I build these ecosystems. And looking down from above at the murky water with the leaves that are kind of peeking up from the substrate floor to the surface, it just looks like where you would find beta hendra or the new like SP jade betas that we have in this hobby, and it just, I don't know, it's all coming together. This is all the hardscape that we're going to be adding into this ecosystem. It's a mix of that Borneo Rossamala wood that we talked about. Here's a gnarled branching piece of it. Lots of intricate little root structures for the fish to swim in. I'm just going to place this in. It's not its final resting point yet. And then since this is biotope-inspired, we're going to use a Manzanita piece of wood because it's easily accessible and very common in the hobby. Now I'm going to go ahead and position this huge pile of hardscape in this ecosystem in a way that I think looks something close to nature. We don't need to worry about the sediments that you see here in the water. It's going to settle out of the water column over time and disappear, and we're going to end up with a nice, crisp, tinted water. So let's go ahead and fill up this tank. There's no controlling Mother Nature, and a wonderful example of this is how all of our hardscape just lifted up off of the substrate of this botanical aquarium. So we're going to have to just wait it out. As we know, Mother Nature operates on the cycle of weeks to months. So once the wood is waterlogged, we will put it back in its final resting places. So I knew from the very beginning that for this 75 gallon, I did want to be able to keep some kind of betta fish. So when I was looking for a group of fish that I could keep together, I landed on Parosphromenus Linkeii, Graceful Rasboras, six-banded barbs, Betta albimarginata, and chocolate grammies. None of these fish are too aggressive. They're all pretty peaceful. They'll leave the bettas alone. They occupy different areas of the water column as well. And so I thought it would provide a nice balanced activity levels across the entire biotope-inspired aquarium. Mother Nature is often unpredictable, and at the 1 month mark, this pretty wild biofilm developed on the floor of the aquarium, engulfing this seed pod. And then in a matter of days, it was completely gone. So there seems to be this connotation that when you have tannins in the water, you are not going to be able to keep live aquatic plants, and I want to just set the record straight that that couldn't be further from the truth. You can totally keep aquarium plants in tinted water. Just keep in mind that the darker the water, the less the plant is going to be able to photosynthesize and the slower it's going to grow. In this biotope-inspired aquarium, I have a number of cryptocarine species and different Java ferns, and I do have a number of boosts, though they do grow incredibly slow without the introduction of CO2. And for the first year that I had this aquarium set up, I had Salvinia oblongifolia, but I did transition it out for floating aquatic bamboo. I don't do any fertilizers for these plants. I am thinking that it is time for me to add in some root tabs to the substrate for the cryptocarines, because I am starting to notice that the leaves are not growing quite as lushly as they were when I first introduced them. But overall, all the plants that I have in this ecosystem are thriving and very algae free. This massive branching structure that we have here in the middle is the Ceylon date palm flower stalk, and it's a brand new product that I will be releasing in April. It is really cool at creating an intricate habitat of sticks that I noticed the Parosphromenus Linkeii love to hide and forage inside. It has a ton of surface area too for the ram's horn snails that I have in this aquarium to eat the biofilms on. If you were to have Autosynclus or plecos in a South American themed aquarium, this would be an amazing botanical for cultivating biofilms and the supplemental nutrition that they need as they forage around the ecosystem. The school of six-banded barbs that I have in here are some of my favorite fish that I have at the moment. And then because we do have that layer of detritus on the sand, they will go down and they forage in the detritus, mixing it up, looking for any snails that are aging out of the ecosystem or food that has fallen down from the regular fish feedings. And they do a really good job of just circulating nutrients within the aquarium. My Indonesian biotope-inspired Blackwater Aquarium has been set up for a little over 1 year now, and it is absolutely thriving. The crypt carpets and Java fern carpets that I established over a year ago now are thriving and growing in quite nicely. It's kind of funny to have slow growing plants as a carpeting plant. The fish we have in here are established quite well. We have a school of Graceful Rasboras, and then a school of six-banded barbs, and then a couple pairs of Parosphromenus Linkeii. Unfortunately, the Betta albimarginata that I had introduced into this aquarium about a year ago aged out. They were some of my longest lived fish, and I had them for about 5 or 6 years, which is about how long they live. Unfortunately, the chocolate grummies we did lose because the ecosystem garage went through a bout of ick. It's like the first time in my career coming back to the hobby and starting Betta Botanicals where I had an ick outbreak, and definitely made me rethink some of my quarantine protocols that I have between aquariums. We talked a little bit about that in the previous video. A really important concept that I would love to cover with you is the 3 types of botanical aquariums that we have in this niche. The most constrictive and sometimes the most rewarding is a biotope aquarium, which is an assemblage of plants, botanicals, and animals from the same geographic, the same habitat, or the same niche specific location on Earth. You use plants, animals, and botanicals that would be found from the same river. Kind of bent the rules and the definition and the intentions of this ecosystem in the year that I have had it, as my fascinations with these botanicals and fish has changed. I did remove the Salvinia oblongifolia, which is from South America. We moved it over to the South American biotope-inspired aquarium just over out of frame, and we replaced it with a floating bamboo plant, which I think looks a little bit more generic Southeast Asian inspired. We are testing a palm frond from Indonesia in here, and we have some Ulin pods which come from the Indonesian ironwood tree. This is a brand new botanical that I'll be releasing in April of 2025. It nicely contrasts with the tinted water since the exterior of it is a little bit lighter in color. Of the 3 kinds of botanical ecosystems that you can keep in the hobby, the biotope aquarium is the one with the strictest definition. Blackwater aquariums have a very specific chemical definition because their water is a source of geology, and the water rolls down the mountains and the water table through rocks and areas of botanicals and forest that help to make the water really soft with low levels of dissolved minerals and a really low pH and tinted water. Think about the tannin accumulation of a Blackwater aquarium. I like to think about that in terms of like my laundry, and no matter how much I do laundry, it seems like the clothes hamper is always full. That's kind of like how the accumulation of leaf litter in habitats with blackwaters functions. Leaves fall out of the forest canopy above as allochthonous inputs into the waterways, and the leaves cannot break down fast enough to dilute the tannin concentrations in the water. So blackwaters will have really low levels of TDS. We think sub 50, and then pHs will be below that 7 mark. We usually find blackwaters between pHs of 5.5 all the way down into the 3s. It really depends on the amount of organics and the types of plants that we have in those environments. The Parosphromenus Linkeii we have in here thrive in pHs in the 4s. The beta macrostomas that I have on the back rack of the ecosystem garage, those also thrive in pHs that are really low. But unlike a biotope, when you have a Blackwater aquarium, you don't have to stick to fish, plants, and botanicals from the same geographic region. You could put neon tetras with the Graceful Rasboras and use Texas live oak leaf litter from North America and have a beautiful functioning ecosystem as a Blackwater aquarium. The most accessible type of ecosystem in the botanical aquarium hobby is the botanical method aquarium, which sole purpose is to replicate the natural processes of nature: leaf litter accumulation, detritus accumulation, microbial proliferation. You rely on the aquarium as the largest filter instead of having robust forms of mechanical filtration in your canister filters or hub filters. You can use botanicals from all over the globe. You can use fish and plants from all different continents. And you don't necessarily have to have tinted water. Usually it is a product of the botanicals to have that tinted water. And you don't necessarily care where the pH lands, though. If you have soft water or soft city tap water, you're probably going to land somewhere between 6 and 7. But if your source water is from a well like I have, and if I used it untreated, my pH would sit about 7.5 to 8.5. Botanical method aquarium, we don't really mind about chasing pH numbers. We'll just let the ecosystem settle to where it's going to naturally level out with, based on the source water we're using, the botanicals, and the types of wood that we are using. What we really care is about replicating the natural processes that these fish would experience in nature. And I don't know if you can hear it right now, but my Ranitimea imitator viridaros just started calling. I don't know if my microphone is going to pick up the sound that they're doing, but they're some of my favorite frogs. Oh my gosh, and the call is so loud for a frog that's like the size of a nickel. Biotope aquariums have a very specific geographic definition to them. Blackwater aquariums have a very specific chemical definition to them, whereas the botanical method aquarium is the most forgiving and just requires that you try to mimic the natural processes these fish would experience in nature. So that's it for this episode of Betta Botanicals. Thank you for tuning in to my YouTube channel. We covered how to set up a Indonesian biotope-inspired aquarium with the fish and the plants that we used. In the next video, we're going to go over how I customized all of the sponsored equipment that I got from Fluval Aquatics to better serve the needs of a biotope aquarium, as well as the maintenance schedule that I am following for these ecosystems to help ensure that the plants and the fish are kept in the best health. If you did enjoy this video, make sure to subscribe and hit the like button. And if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below. Myself or my Tannin Bay brand ambassadors will be sure to help answer all of your questions. And I hope that you join me for the next episode on the Betta Botanicals channel.